This is a conversation with Daniel Ramsay, head retail industry at Google, who has a front row seat to challenges and opportunities for e-commerce clients in the current paradigm shift driven by AI. We discuss shifts in online shopping expectations, how online retailers are prepping with shopping agents, augmented reality, and powerful recommendation engines. And we also talk about the big misconceptions with AI, organic search traffic shape shifting, and very importantly, how teams should adapt for the next set of change. Welcome to the AI for Marketing show. I'm your host, Angelina, with many years of experience marketing in the tech industry. This show is for marketers to keep up with the pace of AI. We host conversations with innovative leaders who are experimenting, navigating the world of AI for marketing. And today, we're joined by Daniel Ramsay, leader of industry retail at Google, an expert in digital transformation, marketing, and leadership. Daniel, you have an incredible story of your journey, and I'm excited for you to share it with our viewers today. So, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Daniel, share with us a little bit about,
Sure.
how you got to where you are right now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So currently, I lead a business within Google that's focused on a group of e-commerce focused clients in the clothing, apparel, gifting, and personalization space. And in many respects, I've got a front row seat to the challenges and the opportunities that these businesses face in this current paradigm shift into the new world driven by AI. And it's an incredible opportunity to help them navigate this and drive growth for it. And as you can tell, I'm not from the US. I started my career out in the UK, where I was born and bred. And actually, I've got a marketing background. So I really started out my career working in marketing agencies, and then on the client side, predominantly running marketing campaigns with the goal of driving sales, fundraising, or driving brand awareness and brand growth. So I've very much got the rounded experience because now, and for the majority of the time that I've been working at Google, I've been working with very heavily performance focused clients. And so, as the through line through my career has essentially been, an increasing influence of digital marketing over all of the aspects of the marketing function, from strategy all the way through to execution. And then really joined Google just after the paradigm shift from desktop to mobile, which was a large change for a lot of brands.
Yeah.
And we're now at this next fundamental change,
Yeah.
which is a new AI-driven marketing world.
Yeah.
And the thing that's kept me engaged with this whole space and increasingly engaged with my work here at Google is just the rapid pace of change is causing me to make sure that my skills are right up to scratch,
Yeah.
and that I'm bringing the best they possibly can to those clients who need it so much at the moment in order to be able to keep their business healthy.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you're squarely in the seat, and that too in e-commerce, right? Which is
Right.
already unrelenting. And absolutely. I mean, I think we're going to sound like broken records here, but that is how it feels, right? Like the pace of change is staggering, right? Like
Right.
just keeping up with the stuff that's changing is a full-time job, really, right?
Right.
Right. So I think, yeah, like in your purview, since you're so very focused on this uh, e-commerce and the online shopping world and
Mm.
behavior, and that too digitally tracking it, right,
Yeah.
and influencing it. So how has AI fundamentally changed the way already, right, that consumers are discovering products, are purchasing products.
Hmm.
Like you mentioned, the transition from desktop to mobile, right? Like, so there was a shift for sure. There was a hesitation initially,
Yeah.
concerns about privacy and all that, right? And then it just took off.
Yeah.
So with AI, what is it that you're seeing?
So I think the best way to describe it is there's a sort of symbiotic relationship between what a user gets and then what a user expects.
Mm,
And increasingly, I think users are getting very intuitive experiences. And now they expect even more intuitive experiences. Let me break that down for you in a little bit more detail. So, if you just looked at it in the world of Google, it's now possible to infer so much more from a large query input that we're much more able to serve products and information about products
mm,
to more intuitive queries. And that's just in the world of search. You can see the same thing is happening in the more algorithmically generated
mm,
media, where your inputs based on your behavioral habits on that media are influencing what you receive. Now you extend that into the fact that with AI driven experiences, the input itself is multimodal.
mhm.
So no longer are you having to type something,
Just
you're
text.
speaking it,
Yeah.
you're taking a photo of it,
Yeah.
you're uploading a video of it, and then you're using that as a way to find it, the thing that you're looking for.
Mm,
And how that's helping consumers is if I was to try and explain what a pair of glasses looked like, I'd find it pretty hard. But if I was to find an image of some glasses I like and
yeah.
show them to you, I'd find that pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, therefore, that's what I mean by intuitive, is that
Mm,
actually when you're seeking something, you've got way more intuitive opportunities or options to be able to seek it. And that's shifting the way that people research and buy because they're able to be much more creative in the way that they look for products, but they're also expecting more in return. I'll give you a great example. Let's say you are trying to get some new furniture for your living room.
mm,
And historically, what you may have done is you may have tried to select items based on color matching, perhaps even material matching, so on and so
mm,
forth. Now imagine that you could put more context in around your living scenario,
mm,
such as maybe you've got kids.
mm,
So the results that are now served are much more in line with the fact that perhaps if you've got kids, what you really need is something that's easy to clean.
mm.
And so there's more that we can infer from the inputs, and therefore there's more accurate responses that can be given. And that's improving the whole shopping experience. And it's meaning that people can discover more quickly and we can navigate people to buy more easily.
Yeah, that got me thinking on so many different angles, right? Like it's so basically the richness, right, of the
Right,
in and out itself is being elevated.
exactly.
So yeah, that is absolutely, and the context, right? Like with AI, it's building the context and it's building the memory. So just because I put in something, to take your furniture example, I put in something that I'm looking for a new, couch,
Yeah,
into the search engine of choice, right?
yeah,
I put it in. The thing is that even that one liner now translates into a lot more, I think, behind the scenes because of my conversations, because of everything else that's being talking to each other. it knows a
Right.
lot more about me, right? Like that I'm in California, the weather, like the family
Exactly.
structure. Maybe I've talked about looking for my pet, something. So um,
Exactly.
keeping all that. So that is actually very interesting.
So
Now,
there's sort of a blend of the, what used to be separated between sort of the inspiration and the action. And
yeah,
actually, they get blended because you can be inspired by the fact that whichever service you're using interprets more about what you may need and
yeah,
then give you more options about what might satisfy what you may need. Whereas previously, it was a little bit more um, back and forth. You would have to tell it what you need, and it
yeah.
would serve it back for you. You'd have to, in response to that, look again. So the inspiration and the action is becoming a lot more blended, and that's creating a lot of opportunities.
So a question, a follow-up on that one is that in order for that shopping experience to be elevated, right, like across the board, right, like what are some of the e-commerce retailers having to do or redo, right? Because, like you said, we as consumers are getting more trained for more intuitive experiences because maybe that's what we are seeing in a few select
Mm-hmm.
places, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Amazon and like ChatGPT and Google, right? Like
Right.
but then if I'm going shopping on Wayfair or I'm
Mm-hmm.
going shopping on something else, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so Walmart, right? Like, so what are the e-commerce retailers? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
not all gonna sit and build their own LLM models,
Right. Right.
right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what are you seeing there,
Yeah.
them to respond to this trend?
Yeah. I think there are two aspects of that. One is um, how they ensure that what their products that they're selling are showing up in the right way. That's one element of it, and that's off their platform. And then on their platform, they also need to think about how to use AI in order to do that as well. So
Mhm.
let's separate those two out. And let's first of all talk about how do you prepare yourself for those new AI driven experiences that
Mhm.
are being created, elsewhere, whether it's social, whether it's on search platforms, whatever it
Mhm.
may be. And in the world of shopping, the fundamental element to this is the type of data that you can pass over
Mhm.
to these partners.
Mhm.
And in many respects,
Mhm.
that starts with a feed of data.
Mhm.
And feeds have always been fundamental for passing data, safely to a partner like a social platform or search platform.
Mhm.
What's become even more important is what you include in that feed. So, actually, the volume of content that you need in that feed is growing. So, let me give you a little bit of an example to bring this to life. And the very basic element of this, your description of your product needs to be much more nuanced
Mhm.
and a larger description. And just
Mhm.
so happens that we have LLMs that can provide those better descriptions of products. You can
Mhm.
literally upload an image, get a description of your product, and add that to your feed. Why is that important? Because as users are searching in much more depth and with much more sort of, as I described it, an
Yeah.
intuitive approach, you need to ensure that LLMs have the right information to make the right inference
Mm.
about whether that product is a good match for that user's need. So at the core of it is just
Yeah.
description. But then you get into the world of, detailed attributes. So it's so crucial to ensure that you've got the right details around things like, I work quite heavily in the clothing and apparel space.
Mm. Yeah.
So fit,
Yeah.
style,
Yeah.
color, sizing, all of these things to make sure that you've got the right coverage on all of those attributes.
Yeah.
Then descriptors are also extremely important. And these are things that sort of like manually input, like a description of the product, a
Mm.
shorter description, so there's more to infer. But then you go into more visual media. So the need now for imagery and large volumes of imagery is really high. Previously it used to be you'd get away with a couple of images of a product and that's about it.
Yeah, yeah,
Now you need a large volume of imagery, from to bring that product to life, because with users inputting imagery to search, it
yeah,
needs to match, or a good way to match it is to imagery. So imagine passing that imagery across, and then video as well, multimedia
yeah,
is super important to pass as well. Plus, when you think about that imagery and how important that is, it's also really important to think about variations of the same image, like background settings,
yeah,
models, so on and so forth, where there's a lot more to match to context, given how much an LLM can grasp
yeah,
context. So, for example, the cocktail dress, in a London restaurant is going to be a different thing that somebody's going to be looking for in the user's mind
yeah,
than the cocktail dress in the Mediterranean location, because
yeah.
the material is going to be different. You're not going to want something so warm in the Mediterranean location. All these things are actually, they're all crucial, and actually an LLM will be able to make much more of an inference about which product to match. So having variations in product imagery is absolutely crucial. So that's the biggest piece of advice that I have, like, as a fundamental on
Yeah.
the shopping piece. And it's also kind of interesting how much these feeds are actually helping for let's say more organic experiences as well as paid media experiences. So they're absolutely crucial.
So essentially, what you're saying is that as the consumers' shopping habits are changing and expectations are changing, under the hood, the e-commerce retailers and providers have to really rethink their product strategies, right? Like in
Right.
the sense of like marketing strategies around their product, right? And start getting even more detailed because
Exactly.
in a way, it's almost like they are preparing for the AI agents to be shopping, right?
Right.
You know what I
Which
mean?
is
Like I think we're moving in that direction right now, that the
exactly.
AI agents and the LLMs, they can really understand a high
Yeah.
level of verbosity.
Right.
So the metadata that we have to provide in order for us to be discovered, it
Yep.
has to essentially make sense to, and match the verbosity level, right? Like, is how I'm making sense in my head.
Exactly, exactly. And then, I described the how do you ensure that you're showing up effectively on other platforms as an
Yeah.
e-commerce retailer, but for your own e-commerce experience, there's some crucial elements to explore. The first one is, how do LLMs assist the shopping experience?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
there's just some great updates from StitchFix in the last week or so, as they've re-engineered their e-commerce experience to be fundamentally driven by an AI agent.
Hmm.
Um, this is a retailer that's thinking very carefully about streamlining the whole shopping experience.
Mhm.
And actually, AI can really do that. You can chat with an AI stylist to find your style, find the right product for you,
Hmm.
start to basket build and infer more about what you might want in future packages that get sent out to you. Like, there's several experiences like that are being created. You mentioned Wayfair, in the furniture space. For a while now, there's been a lot of experimentation with augmented reality, being
Yeah.
able to drop the item into your location, so your spot, so that you can actually see and almost feel what
Yeah.
that item is going to be looking like. These are much more assistive experiences. And, that's one way to help navigate users through the buying process. However, there is a big area of opportunity now, I feel, is in making recommendations.
Hmm.
And, with the capability that LLMs have to understand user behavior, actually AI driven on-site recommendations have become so much more powerful. And that's an area that I think, is often difficult for a retailer to build as effectively as some of these large hyperscalers are building, because of the capability they have to train models in so many different settings that
Yeah.
once it's applied to an e-commerce retailer's website, the way that it's inferring the consumer data improves the recommendations so much.
It's very interesting because I think we all, right, like learned first or experienced recommendations firsthand with
Mm,
Amazon, right? I mean,
mm,
and Netflix, right? Like
mm.
these were the two consumer brands that did it really, really well. But
Yeah,
it's an interesting point because they also have armies of engineers who were
right.
working on the models. So I
Yeah,
think what you're saying is that it's going to actually bring that similar or even a more enhanced recommendations experience to pretty much like all e-commerce,
exactly.
retailing experience. And that's okay, that's a shift that we will
Yeah,
see.
right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that e-commerce retailers have about how AI is going to impact their business?
Yeah. I think I wouldn't just isolate this to e-commerce retailers, but I definitely see it happening in this space. And honestly, it's the fear of there being some impact on people's jobs. And the reason why I say that's a big misconception is because what I'm actually seeing is such a demand for people to understand these tools and how to use these tools and
Mm,
augment what they're doing currently,
mm,
that it's making some of the fear, if you like, become a misconception. I'll give you a really, really good
mm,
example. Um, I work with heavy performance focused advertisers, as I explained, and they're typically measuring any media investments with a very tight goal, typically some sort of profit margin or return on ad spend type of
mm,
goal. And it can make it quite difficult to expand into any other media than the ones where people are looking to buy immediately.
mm,
So a really good example is video.
mm.
Video is often something that's in that consideration stage where people are learning more, they're getting more inspired.
Yeah.
So the purchase takes place further down the purchase funnel.
Mm,
So, sometimes more difficult to accredit the sale right at the point. So the reason I bring that up is because what's always been a challenge historically is actually producing video content because it's costly to
mhm,
produce,
mhm,
or can be costly to produce. It means that the return you get from it doesn't always look so favorable. But now imagine if you had the capability to produce a lot of content at a
mm,
relatively low cost. You could potentially unlock the capability to reach a much larger audience than you had to previously and
mm.
expand your business, right? But
Yeah,
when you see these Gen AI tools in action, what you actually see are tools that need a lot of guidance.
yeah,
And the need for people to understand not just creativity and how to build it, but then how to get the best out of some of these generative AI tools
yeah,
is absolutely crucial. And so for creative teams, I think what this is going to unleash is a huge need for them, because they are going to be the ones that are going to have to be getting the most out of these tools to produce this content. And I think one of the misconceptions is that somehow it may be undermining, but I actually see it as fundamentally enhancing
yeah,
and really giving an opportunity. Um, and so I think that's one big misconception is that there's some kind of threat. And I actually think if harnessed properly, there's
yeah,
actually a larger opportunity.
yeah. I'm with you on that. I mean, and that's not just for e-commerce retailers, that's across the board, right? Like there's just that fear. In fact, I was watching a, a YouTube, show just the other day, and there
Mm.
was Dharmesh, who is, HubSpot founder,
Yeah.
and it was a very interesting conversation, and I think one thing that he said really stuck with me, and in fact, I'm also taking it with me already
Mm.
to my own, marketing team,
Mm.
because I feel like that there is that underlying fear of like, oh, if I try this out with AI and if I
Mhm.
talk about it, then does that mean that, they're going to think that what am I doing, right? Like,
Right.
so you
Right.
know what I mean? Like, so there's a displacement fear. But what Dharmesh kind of like explained yesterday, and there's this phrase that he used, and he said, it's not about you versus AI.
Mm.
It's about you to the power of AI, right?
Right.
So it's your potential, right?
Yeah.
Can really like take off
Exactly.
because you have all these, agents and capabilities that you did
Hmm.
not have until now. I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful. And in your video making example,
Mm.
I can totally see it as, I mean, both the points that you made, which is
Mm.
it was an expensive investment in making videos.
Mhm.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
very useful, but like
Mm.
you said, you watch video, you don't necessarily make a purchase right away because you're in a
Right.
completely different, you're maybe in YouTube or you're lounging and you're watching it, you're not necessarily making a purchase, right? Like at
Yeah.
that time. So there's a disconnect in the ROI.
Yeah.
And then the second piece is that if I watch a video which is tailored more to me, right, then that's a lot more effective than a
Right.
generic video, right?
Right.
So a
Exactly.
video which like to take your
Mm.
example of a cocktail dress, right? Like if I
Mhm.
take somebody who's my age, living here in California, whatever, right?
Mhm.
My background, all
Mhm.
that stuff, and they show up in the video, I'm
Yeah.
gonna definitely have a better conversion down the road.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, both are very interesting points.
Yeah.
And
And I think what's interesting there is, it was probably beyond the capability of some of the sort of the or efficiency goals that a lot of e-commerce retailers have. It's
yeah,
beyond their capability to then produce a large volume of content. It just doesn't make financial sense. So they wouldn't do it. But now, with the capabilities that they have at their fingertips, it actually is something that they will start to explore.
yeah,
But you have to have um, the human input to
yeah,
be able to get what you need from those tools.
yeah.
And that's where I really think, just on the creative side, there's going to be a huge need for people who can do exactly that job. And the people that get there, learn it quickly, and
Yeah.
get their genius, they're going to be in the best position.
I think there are also going to be those people who were creative, like who had a lot of vision, but
Yeah.
didn't necessarily know how to find their way around in Adobe Acrobat,
Yes.
right? Like, but they knew that, oh, this is what great looks like. So for them
Right.
also, it's great, right? Because you
Yeah.
can give the directions.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely of the optimistic camp, honestly. I feel like seriously, like this is amazing. This is like in a candy store, right? Like where do I
Mm.
go next kind of a thing
Right.
with AI. So absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think you touched upon it a little bit in terms of, how the behaviors are changing
Mm.
when we are, as consumers, we are searching, but then as brands who want to be discovered, who want to show up in the consideration set, um, and as search is getting more conversational, it's getting a
Mm.
lot more personalized, right?
Mhm.
The expectations of that, like voice search, right? Like it's there
Mhm.
now, right? And
Mhm.
and people get turned off if it's not personalized, right? Like the results. Like if I'm looking for, I don't know what was I was looking for my gym timing or something, right? Like City Sports Club. And I asked my daughter because I was driving, and I asked her to like just find it. And the results that came up was like a gym in Manhattan, right? Like the timings, and I'm like, what? Right? Like, what is this about, right? Like,
Yeah.
anyway, so more conversational. She was trying
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
voice search and more personalized. So
Yeah.
if we want to just Daniel talk about like e-commerce retailers, and
Mm.
those who are in that space.
Mm,
as they are preparing, right? Like for the
mm.
next, right, like say 12 months. And that itself seems to be a long horizon
Yeah,
now of the AI-driven changes, right? Like what are some of the things that they should be doing if they're not already doing
yeah,
to prepare for those changes?
yeah. And I think you know, some of the biggest questions I get when I'm talking to retailers is not about like what's happening with the products
Yeah,
or what's which direction is like whatever social or search heading. Like I think everyone's got a pretty good feel of that, and the one thing that they all know is it's changing very rapidly, so they're just going to have to keep a pulse on it. No one's going to be able to answer what 12 months is going to look like exactly. The biggest question that I'm getting is, especially from senior leadership, is how do I get my teams ready,
yeah, mm,
and how do I design my teams
mm,
so that they're ready?
yeah,
Because that's going to be the fundamental aspect here, is ensuring that your teams can adapt over the next 12 to 18 months
yeah,
and to ensure that they're positioned and empowered to do that.
yeah,
And I'm going to reference a couple of things that I've seen
sure.
that are super valuable, I think. Um, One of them is capability frameworks.
Mm,
This is like a standard approach that any of the large consultancies and smaller ones will take, where
mm,
they'll take a look at your team and they will identify which capabilities you need to have in place.
yeah,
And you can set targets around it and then think about what that means for the skills base and then your team structure and then, the type of skills you need to have in that
mm,
team.
mm,
And one of the best ones I've seen um, is split across um, in the marketing. This is marketing
mhm,
capability. Is creative and content, uh, marketing like campaign execution, and
mhm,
then measurement.
mm,
And um, and then this is actually a framework that has been developed in conjunction with one of the large consultancies. And I've worked with several clients on moving teams along these capability frameworks to
mm,
mature the business. And so I think there are several out there. I'd recommend anyone exploring this space go
yeah,
and research, take a look at the different capability frameworks that are available, and then
yeah,
start to pinpoint what's needed in the team, and
yeah,
then start to structure a team around that. That's certainly one place I'd start. The other thing I've seen very tactically that's really been something quite sort of eye-opening, which I saw my some of my retail clients doing, and I just started to adopt something similar in my own team,
yeah,
which is to just set the expectation that using AI tools is now part of what we do.
yeah,
And so, one organization I know well sets a goal that every week every individual has to report back the
yeah,
three things they did differently that week
yeah,
using AI.
mm,
And the goal, which I
yeah,
thought was very smart, was not to catch anyone out. It
yeah,
was just put in the center of the expectations
yeah,
using AI tools in everyday work
yeah,
was now an expectation, a core one. And the point around learning was like, go out and do it, come
yeah,
back and tell me how it went.
yeah,
You're getting people more comfortable and familiar with a lot of these
yeah,
tools. And, when you're using an LLM to, write copy, or you're using, a Gen AI tool like Flow to create video,
yeah,
or you're exploring tools like Replit to create apps,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, all these areas, it is, a whole new skill set can be daunting for some, but just setting the expectation of going out there, trying it,
yeah,
and then explaining where you've got to just builds that muscle and that rhythm around
totally.
experimentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like that's something that I'm also seeing, that there is a hesitation. There is also, like we said, like a little bit of fear of replacement, right? So you're just giving them the permission, right? And also you're basically rewarding that behavior, right? That
Right.
the more you use it, then,
Yeah.
the better it is for
Yeah.
the organization really to advance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But just going back to the capabilities framework, because I thought that was really interesting. So
Mm.
even without AI, right? Like anytime we're at the crossroads of change, like if we're only zooming into the marketing organization, then definitely those capabilities that you talked about, right? Like strategy, process,
Mm-hmm.
analytics, execution, right? Like those
Mm-hmm.
are standard, nothing's changing there. But
Yeah.
in terms of the assessment of where the organization is and
Yeah.
also where the organization needs to go,
Yeah.
so are you seeing the introduction of different kinds of skills? And you know what I mean? Like a person is strategic with or without AI. Is that,
Mm-hmm.
or does somebody actually get more strategic because they're now like a power, user, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to kind of like put on so many different hats and they're able to build their own agents. Like I'm just trying to understand like how the capability framework is now getting refined to
Yeah.
actually reflect the reality of what the AI workforce needs to look like.
Yeah, well, I think when you talk about the reason why capabilities are used is because they're general enough to not specify whether the capability is from a piece of technology or from a human,
Mm.
right? And so actually at any one point, it could be one or the other or the two together as an augmentation of each other. And I
Okay.
think that's a crucial part. What you need to identify is, are you capable of achieving X, right? And
Mm.
so to answer your question, it's not quite as straightforward as like technological capabilities or human capabilities, whether the team can achieve it. But you also asked the separate question, which is, or at least I heard a separate question, which is that what are some of the capabilities that are new that
Yeah.
we're having to infuse into the team, and the one the one theme that I'm seeing is that individuals are actually now in some regards having to understand multiple roles. Let me give you a really good example. I am aware some of the large agencies, the holdco agencies, and a lot of the large brands, globally, um, are sort of augmenting the marketing process, if you or workflow, if you like, with AI. So, historically, um, if you were launching a new product, you might have to do a ton of research and into an audience or the perception of the product and how the features come across and so on and so forth. Um, and then you might need to take that research and you might need to turn that into insights.
Mm.
And then you might need to take those insights and you might need to turn them into a brief for a
Mhm.
campaign. And then you might need to take that brief and create a strategy and a creative execution.
Mhm.
And then you might need to take the creative execution, the guidance for it, and go and produce the creative, right? And that whole process would require separate skills. Now, actually, one person or a handful of people can actually do a lot of that work. You could use, a tool like ChatGPT or Gemini Deep Research to draw out research on a specific audience, whatever, obviously it's going to be whatever is publicly available. You could use an LLM to take a large research report and turn it into a brief.
Mhm.
You could then use an LLM to take that brief and
Yeah.
then turn it into a creative execution. And you could use one of the LLMs or one of the video platforms, the specialist video platforms, to start creating concepts.
Yeah.
And so, from that point of view, actually, the skill set I think is going to broaden, or at least the knowledge set is going to have to broaden because these tools are going to be augmenting us. And I think when you get into other, specific domains like creative generation
Yeah.
we talked about before with video, that's also going to be true. You're going to need somebody who has the capability to understand visual aesthetics, who has the understanding of creative from the point of view of, as I describe it, its cultural relevance or its
Yeah.
capability to strike an emotional nerve with a human, so on and so forth. You're going to have people who can do all of that and
Yeah.
be able to prompt a Gen AI system and be able to get the thing that they've got the vision for produced. And I think that's a very, very different, I'd say very different. It's a real expansion of current skill sets. And I think when we talk about capabilities, the capabilities aren't necessarily about individuals and, or technology, but they do encapsulate some of those elements that I talked about. Then how you structure your team around it and how you get the right individuals is the next step. And I do think that's what I've just described is the change in the skill set that's going to be required in order to be able to bring those capabilities to life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, my heart goes out really to the interns and the ones who are just starting out. Because on one hand, yes, they are having so many tools, right? Like they can actually move really fast and they can do so much. But on the other hand, I think they're missing out on the context that, with experience, you kind of build out on the end to end, right? Of
Yeah.
like, what does greatness look like and what will
Yeah.
it be used for, right?
Yes.
That context is missing. So I think
Completely.
there's going to be a period of adjustment for everyone.
Yeah. Now, also, I am a techno optimist,
Yeah.
and I sometimes wonder whether, even for those who, like you said, the interns, of
Yeah.
course,
Junior. Yeah.
experience or people in the junior stage of their jobs, actually, maybe the playing field has become a little bit more democratized
Mm.
because the barrier to entry to create some amazing video
Yeah.
is reduced to some degree.
Yeah.
And, the scope for experimentation is vast right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And so, what it may unlock is, or we may see, is actually those that understand these tools best and also can experiment with them quickly to get some live feedback on how the results are going down, maybe the ones that understand how to use this tooling more effectively. And they might actually be more effective than those people who have already got the experience. It's one of the things
Because
we've
they're
seen.
set in their ways.
Exactly. So we've already seen that history. So there is this concept that I think it's Sam Altman or one of the other visionaries in this space talks about. It's like, in the not too distant future, we're going to have the single person, billion or possibly even $1 trillion company.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know that's a very extreme, circumstance, but I think what it's articulating is that those that understand the tools
Yeah.
will unlock an incredible amount of value.
Yeah.
And the sooner they experiment with them to understand the results and iterate on them, the faster they'll get to, driving that value, and I'm not for one second suggesting that Sam Altman quote is the truth, but it's a perspective and it's one that's worth bearing in mind. And I think it relates to what we're talking about here,
Yeah.
which is actually, sometimes, the incumbents aren't necessarily the ones in the strongest position.
Yeah. And I mean, I would say that that's not even a stretch because we're already seeing that happen, right? Like we have people now with like, I mean, on LinkedIn, right? Like you see these posts all the time, which is like there's this guy and he just has one person and that's his entire marketing team, right?
Right.
Because the vision is there, the clarity is there, and the execution speed is there because of being able to use these tools.
Yeah.
So it's been I mean, I think we can go on and on, but
Yeah.
I think we are probably at time,
Yeah.
but it's fascinating, to have this conversation and to dive into this world of like e-commerce and everything that's changing. And as consumers, we are definitely, I mean, I loved what you said initially, which is like we're the ones who are also driving, right? Like that want and the expectation for an intuitive
Mm.
experience, and
Yeah.
we're seeing that come to fruition now, right? Like through AI. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anything, Daniel, that you would like to say, maybe summarize or towards the end, or how folks could even like maybe even connect with you,
Yeah.
those who are really interested, and would like to pick your brain further.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on LinkedIn as Daniel Ramsay. That's probably the best place to start. No, and I think we sort of ended on the right note there. Personally, I am a techno optimist,
Yeah,
and I get into this debate very heavily with my wife around the techno optimism one. But I personally am the techno optimist, and I do see the incredible opportunities that the lowering, as we described before, of the barrier to entry on some
yeah,
of these goals that really do matter in
yeah,
the e-commerce space and more broadly, I think is a big unlock. And I love that example that I gave of, like, even if you don't have a consultant to help you with the capability framework, and you don't go that far, if
yeah,
you just set the task for yourself and your team
yeah,
to every week do
yeah,
three things,
yeah,
using AI to improve what they're already doing from a
yeah,
marketing perspective or even from the business operations perspective. I think as soon as you do that, the more rapidly you'll start to harness the
yeah.
potential.
I think I'm gonna steal that because I was already thinking about like how do I, get this muscle finessed.
Yeah.
I just add one thing to that, which is it's not just for the team. I think
Mm.
leaders also have to set the example. And
Yes.
right, like the leaders also have to share, right? Like how are they using it? And um, because we don't just want like the team on the ground to be AI savvy. I mean, I think we want leadership also to be super excited and
Great.
savvy with AI, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just something that was crossing my mind because I was thinking about, how to actually take this to field.
Yeah.
But would love it, and I think I would love to, because of the field changing so fast, like we said.
Yeah.
I think in about 2 months' time, we'll be like, what were we talking about, right? Like the whole world has changed now, right?
Exactly.
So would love to have you for a conversation again
Yeah.
on this topic, and yeah, thank you so much for taking the time, Daniel.
Thank you. Appreciate it.